Oh boy, Daikaiju Legends is really trying to milk all the Zone Fighter stuff he can. Taking a little bit of a cue from our good pal Monster Island buddies, today we're going to take a closer look at the first 5 episodes from Zone Fighter Season 2, as I reveal a whole bunch of cool secrets and behind the scenes details that only the people who work on them know about. So let's get started with Episode 1 of Season 2, Disruption of Peace. Ray Blood destroying Planet Peaceland takes place 73 years in the past, a nod to the year that the original Zone Fighter series came out. In addition, this is sort of the retelling of the original series, in which Zone's home, Planet Peaceland, is destroyed by the Garoga. That escape pod is actually from Star Wars. We seem to use a couple Star Wars vehicles in this series, don't we? So now here's a couple cool tidbits about every character's name. Jason was named after the titular character from Jason and the Argonauts, the film that got me into stop motion and remains one of my all-time favorites to this day. Connor was named after the character of the same name from Power Rangers Dino Thunder, the show that got me into tokusatsu as a kid. Connor in that show also played the Red Ranger, so do with that trivia what you will. May's name doesn't have too much of an interesting origin, aside from sharing it with a character from Overwatch. But it was what I settled on because it sounded happy and peppy enough to fit her character. Kylie was originally going to be named Kira after another character from Power Rangers Dino Thunder, but this was changed before filming. Tyler's name comes from a bit of an inside joke that Taylor just sometimes gets called Tyler. Before shooting for episode 1 began, every character actually had a more Japanese sounding name, sort of akin to season 1 with Koichi and Takeshi. However, all the names were changed, and I feel that all the cool tidbits surrounding all the new names work much better and just makes the entire series flow a little nicer.
Every day to make sure that our organization keeps on running.
Stop.
Taylor's lines and reaction during May's introduction to the team in the start of the episode were improvised, something you'll see a couple times from him in this episode.
Anywhere, anytime.
You can see me trying to hold in my laughter during this line. For some reason, even though I wrote the dumb line, I can't help but laugh whenever I hear Taylor say they could show up anywhere, anytime. And that entire line is just a huge inside joke within our group now.
It's right on top of us.
Demaga was chosen as the monster for this first episode just because he's simple enough to not really require much explanation in terms of backstory or character. But he also proves decently powerful enough to pose a threat to the decently experienced Zone Fighter. Other candidates for this first episode monster included Gomez, Arstron, and even Dorako at one point.
Well, I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but I just saved your life.
Zone Fighter's new voice actor, Blake, replaces my voice that I gave in the first season. This was for multiple reasons. One, it helped exemplify the passing of time and maturing of Zone since the first season. 2, it helps differentiate Zone from Jason, since having myself talk to myself was something I did not want to do again after season 1. And 3, Blake definitely has the most authoritative voice out of all of us, and that worked really well for Zone to have a nice booming voice.
For now, take this.
The SS Zone emblem being the new transformation emblem was chosen because it was what I finally settled on being a good henshin item that properly represented the character, and showed a bit of character development since the first season, as opposed to the Ginga Spark being rebranded into the Perimeter Spark in season 1, and then it kind of becoming the out-of-place Vortex Spark that came from Zone beginning to absorb Ultraminium energy. Tyler's reaction to Zone Fighter is another improvised moment that he came up with on set, and it's definitely one of my absolute favorite moments of humor in the show so far.
What's going on? Why am I up in the air?
Jason's line about being scared that he's high up in the air is a direct reference to Daichi's first line when he becomes Ultraman X for the first time. This line also begins to play up Jason's fear of quite a lot of stuff, including space travel, as we soon learn in episode 4. Godzilla's fake-out appearance was another idea from Taylor. Originally, the scene would have just started with Zone and Godzilla as toys already, and not so prominently displayed, but Taylor's idea worked much better as an opening shot and made for a fun sort of gotcha moment. And this does also confirm Godzilla's existence in-universe as a teeny bit of world building. Originally, the old, terrible Zone Fighter custom that I planned on using before I got the Evolution toy figure would have been the toy that Tyler plays with, but it was not in a condition where it could be used. And as a side note, if you look closely on the TV in the background, you can see mirrored the first short film that Taylor, Dakota, and I all collaborated on playing on it. This was an Easter egg we also included in 17 Hours of Terror. Also, young Tyler is played by one of my younger cousins. Part of the fun of this scene was seeing how far I'd come in terms of editing from episode 6 of season 1, to now remaking that same fight sequence a year and a half later. Gamora absorbing the Ultraminium Iniquita energy and destroying Salamandora is exactly what happened in episode 6, but now we learned that moment of slight humor actually had a bigger impact than anyone maybe expected. This flashback was also meant to give a cool explanation to the quote-unquote scar that Tyler has on his face. In real life, that's just a birthmark that Taylor has, but giving it a cool backstory was definitely fun and worked pretty well for his character.
Good evening, Mistress May.
Emmy is voiced by Albert Cursor, the voice actor for Kip in Season 1. Emmy was based loosely off of K2SO from Star Wars Rogue One, and was sort of created to act as a foil to Kip in the first season, going from Kip being obedient and pretty stoic to Emmy being very outlandish and snarky.
It could possibly bring harm to Mistress May.
Emmy's constant referring to May as mistress was actually changed during recording the lines for this episode. Originally, Emmy would have simply referred to May as master, but Albert and I joked about mistress and we realized that was way funnier.
Humans, I come from the planet Bolton.
Our first guest voice actor of this season, Alien Bolton, is voiced by Matt from Monstrosities.
He is known by many as the Red Phantom Killer.
The moniker Red Phantom Killer is actually the subtitle often given to Redman by fans. As far as I'm aware, it's not an official subtitle, but it's generally what a lot of people refer to him as. Whoops, had to blur out my license plate. These shots of the Ultraminium Vortexa crashing into Earth were actually among the very first test shots ever made for Season 2, back when the plot was going to be very different. And honestly, that different plot could be its own video entirely, if people care enough to want to hear about it. But at least those shots got some sort of use in the final product. Here's another cool piece of trivia about the new SS Zone emblem transformation. The Henshin pose is actually taken from the pose done by the Zone family in the original series to transform into their Zone Fighter, Angel, and Junior forms, just with the added motion of pressing the emblem to turn into Zone Fighter. This pose that Zone Fighter does to ready up the proton discharge attack is actually the same pose that he does for one of his arrow attacks in the original series.
Over here!
Bolton's overall character and style of fighting was inspired very heavily by his appearance in Ultraman Max, some of my favorite episodes from that series and definitely my favorite incarnation of Bolton.
Murderous Ultraman.
The stop motion of Redman's arm is actually Zone Fighter's arm that was recolored in post since the Redman figure was not out at the point of making this episode. To add on to that, Redman is 100% silhouette in this shot because, if you strip away all the effects, it's just an Ultra 7 figure with Redman's head slapped on in post. Rayblood's eyes here signifies some sort of connection. Think you can find it? This is the third episode in a row that we've seen Connor staring at the sky. I wonder what he's looking for.
What else could we do?
Well, you could always kill him. That might get him to quit his whining. Did I say something wrong?
Tyler's reaction to Emmy semi-jokingly suggesting that they kill Connor was improvised when I told Taylor to react however you want. It's now a bit of a meme image in our friend circle. Hey look, it's snowing in the background of all the phone conversation shots. Literally every day that we planned to film with Alyssa for this episode, either snowed heavily the night of or rained the day of, and that was the best that we got. That's my cat on the table behind Kylie during the phone call. This entire battle at the lake came in a rewrite of the episode. It was heavily inspired by my favorite battle from Ultraman Geed, and kinda just served as me finally being able to do a proper water battle with new effects that were released from ACTIONVFX. I'd been wanting to do a water battle for so long, and this was finally my chance. A bit of a minor detail, I sprayed the figures with some water while I was animating them just so they appeared a little bit wet from fighting around. Hey, check out my blurred license plate again. All of the board games played in this episode are actually games that we play in real life, and tons of the gags in this episode are based on occurrences from our actual experiences. Magular's appearance was included not only because I love the monster's design, but also because I wanted to have a little nod to the fact that Neranga was going to appear in episode 2 of the original season 2, back in its original storyline that was totally scrapped.
Did you just assume my...
No.
A lot of Emmy's snarky dialogue this episode came improvised by Albert during recording of his lines, like this personal favorite of mine.
Oh, go get him, Tiger.
Whoops, had to blur out some graphic stuff on that album cover. The Weeknd is also one of Dakota's favorite groups, so you can definitely see that he's a fan of them by all the albums laying around this episode. Also, Jason's wearing an Ultraman shirt. Not what I was originally planning to wear for this episode, but it kind of just evolved into a subtle gag that he's wearing an Ultraman shirt when he's the host of one. And this episode really starts up the running gag that nobody tends to realize that Jason is Zone Fighter. Another subtle gag, Tyler points the gun at Jason, and you can barely see Jason try to keep it pointed away as Tyler's trying to talk to him. It didn't show up so well on camera, but that was a really fun gag that we came up with on set. The lighting during the outdoor nighttime shots was actually just me holding up 2 separate phone flashlights off camera because we didn't have any actual portable LEDs at the time. Use whatever you can, I guess. This is the first episode where Zone Fighter has his own original grunts from Blake. This was done to get rid of any discrepancy between the original grunts from Toho's series that we had used in previous episodes and his actual voice acting. In an earlier draft of the episode, one that had May in it as well as all the other guys, the episode would have opened with the Magular battle, and it would have been much longer, and the Arstron and Telesdon fights would have only been implied through dialogue, rather than being shown like in the final project. The early morning in Tokyo track from Shin Godzilla is another little joke in our friend group, and while editing this episode I realized it fit the scene pretty well and I put it in there just as a nice little gag. It wasn't actually in the script at all, and this scene would have originally just been silence for some awkward humor.
I'm on to you.
This scene where it seems like Tyler is about to call out Jason for being Zone Fighter is a direct reference to a scene in 10 Cloverfield Lane, where John Goodman's character is played up to seem like he knows about an escape attempt from the cellar, but in the end, it just proves he's talking about Santa Claus and he doesn't actually know what's going on.
I just wonder if I'm right in doing this.
Hey look, Connor only draws 3 cards! Cheater! He actually did draw 4, but it took a while for the last one, so that error was worth the smoother transition between shots. The lunatic versions of all the characters were based loosely off of some sort of trait that relates to each of us. Taylor has a relation with someone who is very big on the government spying on people, and who knows, maybe that's some nice foreshadowing. Dakota just sometimes gets this way, and I do tend to laugh profusely at the very dumbest of things. Hey look, Dakota's Gundam collection! Tyler and Connor falling over in the background was another improvised moment from this episode. Lunatix is one of my favorite Ultra Kaiju, so of course I wanted to have him in this series. But he also felt like the perfect choice for a comedy episode because of the sheer silliness of his design. And him being based on Japanese folklore of a rabbit on the moon also helped play into the whole lunatic and lunacy motif in this episode. Zone Fighter saying "Nani?" wasn't in the script, but Blake wanted to get a good "Nani?" in during his line and grunt recording session. And it fit so well, I just happened to be able to throw it in for a good laugh.
We detected an ultraminium orb headed towards Earth just a short while ago.
Another guest voice actor, GojiFan1993 voices Ultraman Ace. This is the first episode where I've begun to mess around with a lot of 3D landscapes and models, leading to a ton of shots where the camera moves around and dollies in and out for some cool dynamic shots. You'll notice practically every monster and alien shot has some type of movement that I couldn't do before.
Do you really think you'll be able to beat Zone Fighter?
Goji73 voices Alien Mephiles, a nod and reference to his old portrayal in the days of the Four Heavenly Kings. Metron's mech weapon was originally going to be a King Joe unit, either King Joe Scarlet or my own original King Joe unit, but ultimately his customized replicant Galactron proved to not only be a cooler, more original foe, but it also provides the first huge chunk of lore surrounding the Galactron in this universe, and this unit in particular has seen a history with another character before, if you know what I mean, and if you don't, you'll see soon. Replicant Galactron being comprised of fragments of a real Galactron unit and parts of a King Joe unit not only reference that the mech was originally going to be a King Joe unit, but also explain away the King Joe parts that come from the original King Galactron design. The color correction in the Kylie flashback scene was done as a reference to one of my all-time favorite movies, Whiplash. A lot of what's said on Stenz's papers, and excuse the poor handwriting, but that was also kind of meant to hide what was being said there, gives a lot of secrets behind Jumborg's design process in-universe, like that it's made of space titanium, the material that the original Mechagodzilla is made from. Stenz is holding a Mechagodzilla mug in this shot. Young Kylie is played by another little cousin of mine.
Wow. It's really been 30 years, hasn't it?
Jason and Zone's conversation about Team Meteor originally took place with Jason standing outside the building after Kylie and May already enter, with a few flashbacks that would have been created from scratch intercutting the dialogue. However, I found that to be pretty boring and too time-consuming with needing to get this episode done in time for G-Fest 25. This abandoned building is actually an old abandoned college campus, could you tell? That reference to Mechanic Kong, along with the reveal of Stenz's first name, aren't just random tidbits or cameos. You've got to dig back deep if you want to find that connection out. Jumborg was originally going to be Ultra Zero 4, an Ultraman Ace robot. Their role in the series didn't change at all, it would have remained the same whether it was Jumborg, Ace, or Ultra Zero 4, but I found Jumborg to be a lot more fun than just having another Ultraman robot, and he fit better with the roster of obscure Toku heroes in this season. Although Ultra Zero 4 and Ultra Zero 7 got references in the monitor in the Team Meteor base. There was originally going to be another shot in this scene that would have given a better idea of what Connor is doing here and why, but a prop we needed for that shot, well, we didn't have it actually. If you haven't deduced it yet, you'll figure out what exactly this scene is all about soon enough. These two shots are more references to Jason and the Argonauts, specifically the build-up to the skeleton fight, which is my all-time favorite scene in any movie.
What?
The song during Redman's first major appearance in this season is The Beast 2 from Evangelion. This fight was originally going to be a lot more flashy and outlandish than it wound up being, with beams and flaming punches being thrown, but after watching Evangelion, I changed Redman's fight style to be much more melee-oriented and less focused on normal tokusatsu tropes like beams and all that kind of stuff. And as you see in Metron's death, it's also much more gory and relentless. This particular shot is a direct reference to my original inspiration for Redman's fighting style, the Ultraman Orb Thunder Breaststar vs. Galactron battle, my all-time favorite episode from that series. Metron's death scene particularly was inspired by the Eva Unit 1 vs. Unit 3 Angel battle, with a few shots being direct references to one of my favorite moments from that fight. Redman choking Zone Fighter here as a callback to Zone being choked by Bolton before Redman's first appearance. This scene would have also had Redman's first ever spoken dialogue after his lines were removed from episodes 2 and 3, in which he would have said 1 or 2 lines to Zone Fighter. However, in editing, I realized that his actions here, and in past and future episodes, definitely speak way louder than any words I would have had him say. As a side note, Redman being silhouetted by light in pretty much every appearance he's had so far is a tiny bit of symbolism for his character, as you'll learn soon enough. I actually tried choking myself out to get this shot. Yeah, it's not that noticeable. This episode really keeps the running gag of nobody realizing Jason is Zone Fighter going even more, with both Alien Mephiles and Emmy making remarks about it, the latter only to be ignored by Kylie, in a moment that I'm sure many people have wanted to say to Emmy for quite a while. And that about wraps up most of the cool secrets and details that I can recall from every episode so far. I hope you all enjoyed this in-depth look behind the scenes of the first major section of Season 2. If you guys like this stuff, we'll probably do it every 5 episodes or so there's a big chunk of secrets to reveal. And if you want to see more sooner, maybe I'll do one for the first season as well, as there's still quite a few cool details in there. But next year should hopefully be chock full of new episodes, is my hope at least. Anyway, I hope you guys liked this video, and I'll catch you here next time with whatever it is that I have to offer. I would like to give a special thank you to Patreon supporters Justice, Liquid Pestar, GWRzilla, Jimmy Moore, Jeff King, Johnny Sacco, Jaws Infinity, and a very special thank you to Ultriab. If you would like to learn how you can get your name listed at the end of each of my videos as well, in addition to some other awesome rewards, then be sure to visit patreon.com/DaikaijuLegends.